Well, it's time for another week of Honey from the Word. Today's devotion is titled The Treasure Inside, and it comes from 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 7 through 18. But we have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the excellence of the power may be of God and not of us. We are hard pressed on every side, yet not crushed. We are perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed, always carrying about in the body the dying of the Lord Jesus, that the life of Jesus also may be manifested in our body. For we who live are always delivered to death for Jesus' sake, that the life of Jesus also may be manifested in our mortal flesh. So then death is working in us, but life in you. And since we have the same spirit of faith, according to what is written, I believed and therefore I spoke. We also believed and therefore speak, knowing that he who raised up the Lord Jesus will also raise us up with Jesus and will present us with you. For all things are for your sakes, that grace, having spread through the many, may cause thanksgiving to abound to the glory of God. Therefore, we do not lose heart, even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. While we do not look at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal. So I have a question for us for you that are listening today. Is there anybody under the sound of my voice who is under stress? Do you know what the word stress comes from? A Latin word, and that means to be drawn tight. Is anybody listening uptight about anything? How many times do you hear someone ask, how are you doing? And the answer, I'm all stressed out. Why is it that we all, at one time or another, get all stressed out? 7 out of 10 people feel stressed at some point during a typical work day. 80% of workers feel stress on the job. 40% of all job turnovers are due to stress. Somewhere between 75 and 90% of all visits to the doctor's office stem from stress. Stress now costs American businesses over $150 billion a year in healthcare cost, lost work, time, and poor quality of work. Today, we want to look at how we can handle the stress. It can be counterbalanced by what is on the inside of us. The earthen vessel represents us. The treasure represents the Lord, the one inside of us who is great and powerful. Human weakness presents no barrier to the purposes of God. God's power is made perfect in weakness as the brilliance of a treasure is enhanced and magnified by comparison with a common container in which it is placed. The earthen vessels from which the apostle draws his analogy here are the small pottery lamps, cheap and fragile, that could be bought in the shops at Corinth. They were just common everyday vessels. Because of this treasure and light that is in us, we are more than conquerors. We see an example of this in Judges chapter 7, where Gideon defeated the Midianites. The lamps were in the empty vessels, and when the vessels were broken, the light could shine forth, and victory was won. First, we must become empty, so the light can dwell in us. But the more we are afflicted and broken, the more that inward light will shine out and give us the victory. When this light is revealed, it will drive back the powers of darkness. Verse 8 talks about being troubled or hard pressed. It means to afflict, to press hard upon, a compressed way, not distressed or crushed. The word distress means narrowness of place or narrow space, pressed in from the side. We are pressed closely, yet not cramped. We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. The situation was that of hostile forces pressing in on him. He himself is in desperate straits. Perplexed means to be left wanting, to be embarrassed, to be in doubt, not to know which way to turn. Literally, to be unable to find a way out. At times, Paul had no idea of what to do or where to go. Not in despair, to be utterly without a way through, to be utterly at a loss, to renounce all hope. We are never in a state of hopeless despair. To be at the end of man's resources is not to be at the end of God's resources. Verse 9, it says persecuted, pursued, being hunted, fleeing from the battlefield with the enemy in pursuit, not forsaken, to forsake, abandoned, to leave helpless, left behind. Paul may have lost a battle now and then, but never did he lose the war. Not deserted, not left by God, though persecuted by people. Being cast down means to smite down, to inflict a single blow that would wound but not destroy. Yet we are not destroyed. It signifies to destroy utterly, to put out of the way entirely, to abolish, put an end to, ruin. To be destroyed was to meet the enemy's death blow. Paul firmly believed that Satan would never be able to deliver such a blow. Verse 16 says, for which cause we faint not, for though our outward man perish, yet the inward man is renewed day by day. Verse 17 says, for our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. We don't lose heart because of the light or the treasure that's inside of us. See, Paul had plenty of reason to faint. The idea of fainting did not mean here the loss of consciousness. It implies a losing of heart in the heat of the battle. And Paul didn't get that way. I want to give you a closing example. In the 19th century, the maritime industry had a problem. Many cargo ships would get out into the middle of the ocean, and whenever a storm would come up and waves would go over the boat, the ship would sink, and they would lose all the cargo that was there. And they didn't know what the problem was. Finally, a man named Samuel Plimsoll in the 19th century came up with an ideal solution. He submitted a bill in Parliament insisting that a line be drawn outside of the hull of the ship. It became known as the Plimsoll Line. You can load all the cargo in the ship, that the ship would begin in the ship, and that ship would begin to sink into the water. But when the ship hit the Plimsoll Line, you couldn't put any more cargo on that ship, because they knew that if you put any more on and a storm came up, that the ship would sink. All of us have that Plimsoll Line. We've all got that line in our lives. If you put one more task, you put one more due on that list, and you and I are going to sink. When you reach your limit, it's the treasure on the inside that will begin to manifest itself. So be assured that greater is He that is in us than he that is in the world. And that when you reach that limit, that light's going to begin to shine out inside of you.